What is up, everybody? Thank you for tuning in. I am a great guest today, Packers digital reporter, Wes Hodkiewicz. But before we get into that, big shout out to Quick Trip sponsoring the show. If you don't have a Quick Rewards app, be sure to get one. They're giving all types of stuff away. And when you're buying stuff, you can get free chocolate milk. You get free all types of stuff. You can set it up on the app. But let's get into this thing, Wes. First of all, how is your off season going?
It's going great, Matt, but as you can see, I got a new computer this off season. And this thing has not worked out for me at all with really anything, whether it's cloud storage or documentation. And now I can't even get my like lighting set up to work anymore. So I apologize for being in the darkness, but I very much do appreciate you having me back on the podcast, on the show. And yeah, just like that, we are right at the end of the offseason program. In a blink of an eye, those 8 weeks, 9 weeks just kind of fluttered by.
Yeah, they were brutal for me. I don't like it. And I do want to say for a dungeon that you appear to be sitting in, it's one of the nicest dungeons. My
Hey,
first
we got Pokemon back here.
yeah, you
We
you
got
got it
everything you
set
need.
up. My first little studio office in my basement was like the worst thing ever. It's like a window, but like there was a bush in front of you, can't see. There's no light. It was just like it not meant for any type of office. It was like echoey and it was horrible. But
You
so
know what
you're set up better.
the fun thing is, watching all these podcasts over the years and how they grow, and not just like Packers ones. I mean, any type of podcast you listen to, it 9 times out of 10, it starts off with someone appearing to be in a dungeon. And then now you look at like even your setup there, you got the mic stand working. Last time we were having some issues with the mic, beautiful lighting arrangements, nice signage in the background. You look like a professional operation now. I love it.
Yeah, I think if you get the looks, you can get the skill later.
If you build it, the skill will come.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, you just just try to make it appear professional so people will maybe listen for a little bit. And
Yeah.
if there's a good guest, and they're like, all right, I'll stick around for a little bit. But so
Yeah.
I asked some questions for people on Facebook because I haven't had a knowledgeable person on in a while. I forget who I've had on lately, so I don't want to disrespect people. But since like the OTAs have started for sure,
Sure.
and there's a lot of questions I have. That's why one reason I reached out to you because I was like, I want to know stuff, and so my audience obviously wants to know that same stuff, and I can't give it to them. But first, let's start off with Mr. Alan Lazard. Is there anything to worry about? Like, is he going to be a Packer this year?
Yeah, I think so for sure. Not that I've had a chance to talk with Alan at all, but he's a level-headed enough person. I don't know all the things that went into his decision to sit out of the offseason program. The one thing I've been telling our readers with like Insider Inbox and some of the Q&A stuff, that where it gets kind of weird with, mandatory, not, voluntary. Well, if you haven't actually signed your tender yet, his restricted tender, which he hasn't, you're not obligated to be here yet. It's you're an independent contractor without a contract, so to speak. So I think there are some ramifications with that. I think the deadline is June 15th, but I don't know which direction that would go. This is something that's happened in the past too. I think sometimes people somewhat forget this because of how attendance at the offseason program was pretty consistent across the board. But in 2000, I believe it was 13, Sam Shields got the second round tender, and he actually sat out of a majority of the offseason program. I think he did report, though, for mandatory minicamp. Last year, Robert Tunyon ended up signing his tender and then participating in the last leg of it. So it does happen. But at the end of the day, we all know how important Allen is going to be to this offense. And I think, Aaron Nagler mentioned it too. I think it's being smart and being aware and understanding what his role is going to be and how important he's going to be to this offense down the run.
Yeah, I think both sides would want each other. Like I think he's in a great situation. Knows the offense. Rogers is throwing to him. Devontae's gone. He's in a good spot. So you think like players not signing it isn't like I'm upset. I want more money. It's somebody that's just like I don't have to be there if I don't sign it right away, and so I can work out on my own or do
Well,
whatever they're doing.
the big change I've seen, Matt, is really veterans, kind of taking their time now. You heard Rogers talk about it on Tuesday as well. He has his process physically, mentally. I think the pandemic really showed a lot of these guys. If I have a training regimen that I like, and I like being maybe close to home or a certain part of the country, and feel like I can still be up to par and where I need to be come the end of July, I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna stay there rather than coming to Green Bay. As much as I love Green Bay, born and raised here, It's not the same as, SoCal. So I don't know what played into Lazard's reasoning. I'm sure if he's here next week or if he's here during training camp, that'll be a big question for Allen. But in terms of just the decision making, I think what came out of the pandemic when we got to the other side of it now is a lot of guys that are really valuing their time away from the team, in to get basically mentally and physically reset for the upcoming season. Which, by the way, Matt, it's longer than it's ever been. I mean, you're having to play one extra game now. That's one extra week that you're here. And if you're like the Green Bay Packers, you're going the end of July until the end of January. And at some point, I'm sure they hope into February. That's 6, 7 months. I mean, that can be quite the grind.
Yeah, I think a lot of players, like you mentioned, Rogers mentioned not loving the offseason stuff. For me personally, I don't know. I've never been an athlete or even like been close to one.
Right.
But it seems like most of them don't need it. Like the veterans, I get like right now with Rodgers with the young wide receivers, it's beneficial. But like I think most time, like I don't worry about a player if he's missing it. Depends with the reason.
Yeah.
Like the next player, like I want to talk about, David Bakhtiari. Like that makes me a little. It's funny because like people ask me about it, and I'm like, don't worry, don't even worry about it. It's
Yeah.
fine. But then in the back of my head, I'm like, I'm a little worried. Like, should we be worried?
I don't think so. I understand why that would be the natural, thought just because of how things went last year for David and the fact that we did get the 27 snaps against Detroit, but then he wasn't able to play in the playoff game. It's been a long road, and these ACL injuries can be really tricky. Me personally, I think David could be 150%. I still don't know if I would have had him participating in the offseason program. I mean, he's getting to that stage now. I mean, he's in year 9. These guys, I mean, you look at some of these vets around the league, and this is apples and oranges, but Andrew Whitworth, the workload he had with the Rams and how they were cognizant of that during training camp and during the season. There's guys that don't necessarily need to take a lion's share of those reps to be at their physical peak. I think Mercedes Lewis in Green Bay has been a really good example of that. So if this is the course that they felt was best for David to get back for training camp and to be in a place where he can contribute, I don't have any issue with that whatsoever. And ultimately, I think this was a great opportunity, great experience for Yash Neiman to be able to get reps at both left tackle, right tackle. You've seen all these young guys come in. There's going to be a huge competition at basically every position other than left tackle and center. And the more guys that can get those reps this time of the year, and by the trickle down effect of that on the second team unit, I think it's going to really benefit them in the long run. The Packers are incredibly deep on the offensive line. They have more versatility, more options than I can ever recall. I mean, there were years, 2012 would be one of them, where I think they had Evan Dietrich Smith and Don Barclay as 6 and 7, and that's all they had. They had 7 guys on the 53 to start the season. Those were 2 former undrafted free agents. So the Packers have 9 guys, I think, right now that have been drafted in the NFL on this roster on their O line. So once Bakhtiari is good to go, the Packers are going to be smart with it, and they want to make sure that he's there for the long run. So if this was the best path they felt forward for that, I don't have any issue with it.
Yeah, I don't either. I just worry like because I've heard like people saying like he was on a podcast or something, and he said maybe then she said TV, I think, but he said something about drainage in his knee or fluid.
Yeah.
So I wasn't sure. First of all, if that was true because I didn't see it, but I read someone talking about it. But and I'm not a doctor. I have no idea what that means.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I think if I remember right, I think, he did that podcast with Aaron after the season where I think he kind of talked about, the route that he went and things that had happened to get to that point. Like I said, man, these ACLs are interesting deals. I mean, on one end of it, you got David situation last year. You had Brian get back in 10 months or whatever it was, Brian Balaga a number of years ago. Sometimes it takes longer. Sometimes it takes, doesn't take as long, but you know, the big thing is I think for the Packers is with him and Elton Jenkins, because Elton's been out there with the rehab group throughout the offseason program too, making sure you can get those guys back because Elton is also a huge piece in that, he basically can play any of the 5 positions and probably do it at a Pro Bowl level. So uh, this team is going to be interesting in a lot of different areas, whether it's the skill positions or the O line. There's going to be a lot of a feeling out period here throughout camp and the beginning of the season. But I think with how young they are and with the guys they're going to be getting back, hopefully with these injuries, it looks to me like the prototypical Packers team that could really make a push and improve throughout the course of the year.
And so you mentioned the depth of offensive line. You think the offensive line, like assuming David's back and like, everything's what you think this offensive line is going to be legit like a great offensive line because
I do.
I think that they're going to try to run the ball probably more this
Yeah.
year.
Yeah,
So
I mean the athleticism of it, Matt, really is what jumps off the page to me the most. I mean, when you look at, and you got to see how long it's going to take for Sean Ryan and Zach Tom to get integrated here, but those two guys had the best. I think it was vertical jumps at the combine. When you look at the explosivity and the size of those men, I mean, these are type of athletes that really to me scream, power run. Being able to really work and dominate the trenches. I think that was the big line that Adam Stenovich had earlier this offseason program. They want to be physical and fast and speed and athleticism. I think they have that. And I think what's going to happen here, especially as they wait for Jenkins to get back at some point, is you're going to have at least four guys, well, three guys, because I think, Josh Myers is pretty entrenched now at center. But at those two guard spots and potentially right tackle, you're going to have all these draft picks, all these players competing for a starting role and to be considered in that spot. I think that iron sharpens iron in that way. I think you're going to see the best out of that line because of it. And they all have their best years ahead of them right now. I mean, whether it's John Runyon in year 3 or Royce Newman in year 2 or these draft picks. I mean, the Packers drafted 9 offensive linemen the last 3 years. That's never happened in the modern era since 1970. So the resources they've put into that side of the ball, especially with some of the flexibility you get with the game day roster now and having to keep that 8th offensive lineman available, I just see them as having a world of opportunity and potential. Again, there's going to be kinks to be worked out. This isn't the 2014 line or the 2019 line where there's just all this veteran talent. It's going to be unproven. They need to turn that potential into production, and that's going to be the challenge, especially early on here if they don't have Jenkins.
yeah, I know a lot of people are worried about the offensive line. I'm not as knowledgeable about offensive line as I wish I was.
Aren't
'Cause,
we all though? I mean,
yeah, I
that's
know. I
that's
actually
the one
I
thing
know.
you can't just go on PFF and be like, "Oh, okay, yeah,
Yeah,
no, this guy's the best offensive lineman." You got to kind of see it. You got to kind of
yeah,
appreciate it.
you really do. So speaking of the offense, how do you think this offense looks this season? Obviously, we're missing a wide receiver that we're used to seeing. I don't like saying his name because people get all mad, like, "Quit bringing it up!" But,
Marquez Valdez-Scantling, I'm with you. Yeah.
exactly. So are they gonna be I'm sure, like, LaFleur didn't throw his game plan out there on the table for you guys, but you think that they're gonna be obviously, I would think spread the ball around more and run the ball.
Multiple.
Just as simple as that is what they're gonna do?
Yeah, I mean, I think it'll be a little bit more complicated than just that. But but that being said, what I've been telling people is I think this is going to be more of a mesh between the 2018 Titans offense that Matt LaFleur coordinated and what we saw in 2019 with when he first came to Green Bay. Because I think what you're going to see is them riding the run a little bit more, and that doesn't necessarily just mean okay, Aaron Jones 250 carries, AJ Dillon 250 carries. That could be the same amount of carries as last year, but doubling the amount of catches. I mean, I just think, especially in the early part of the season, they're going to really run this offense through Aaron Jones and AJ Dillon because honestly, Matt, those are their two most proven commodities as terms of the playmaking aspects of this thing. Certainly, Alan Lazard is very well accomplished. He's made big plays. Randall Cobb knows this offense, knows Aaron Rodgers better than anybody. But when you look in terms of what I think people across the league really say, okay, that tandem that the Packers have in the backfield, that's among the best in the league. That's where it screams to me what LaFleur had. And when you look at Tennessee, where he started that season with Dion Lewis, but throughout the course of the year made the transition to Derrick Henry. And obviously Henry's just been, skyrocketing ever since then.
Yeah.
I think that's the starting point. I think the pony packages with the 2 running back looks, I think they build upon that. And then honestly, from there, it's seeing where guys fit. I mean, whether it's a Tyler Davis, does he earn some reps? Does Amari Rodgers really solidify himself now as that jet sweep option, a guy that could potentially make some plays underneath? He has looked really good so far in the offseason program. Romeo Dobbs made some terrific plays in the rookie orientation. I think you look at, Christian Watson, his makeup down the line. The potential of that group when you get to November and December is going to be exorbitant. There's going to be so many different ways if they stay healthy that they could potentially impact games. But early on in the season, whether it's the run game, whether it's some of the tight ends that they have coming back, or it's that trio that Rodgers was talking about right now, and Cobb, Lazard, and Sammy Watkins coming in the door, I feel like at each stage of these 4 quarters of a season, the Packers have the ability to have the experience they want while developing talent to see where they can get to at the end of the season, much like they did with Devontae Adams his rookie year in 2014, much like they've done with a lot of these young players. Can you get them in a position down the stretch to really help you and allow you to also win games early on with maybe more of that veteran presence?
Yeah, one thing about the offense, I got a question here from Facebook. Could you see, like, Aaron Jones being more in the passing game, almost like
Yeah,
I wouldn't say so much like Debo, but that's who they compared it to.
yeah.
That's, like, asking a lot. But, yeah, he's a running back, obviously, but he can catch.
Yeah,
Like, I
there's
he
Yeah, I'm sorry to interrupt you, Matt, but yeah,
You're
there's
good.
probably no comp for Debo, just because of he's a receiver that probably could be a thousand
Yeah.
yard back too in this league. But what I like about Aaron Jones is I've never seen, and again, I can start to say these things because I've been covering the team for 10 years. Like when I say this in 2013, well, in my 1 year covering this team, I've never seen this. But over the course of 10 years, I haven't seen a player go from somebody that I think a lot of people consider to be a scat back, a really one dimensional, maybe two down player to an all around stud like Aaron Jones, not just with the pass catching, but with his pass pro, with his ability to stay on the field, and also what he can do when you just get him the ball in open space. That's where I think the pony package, where you can have both him and Dylan, that's where it really opens things up because I think Jones has proven that if he needs to, he could be an Amon Green type pass catcher in this offense. I think he has the hands for it. I think he has the speed for it. And I also feel like with Aaron, he also gets that, you know what, down the line, as I get into my 27, 28, 29-year-old years, this is the type of stuff that could keep me being a big playmaker in this league. And I feel like AJ Dillon can get there too, but Aaron's been doing this now for 5, 6 years, and he's been able to grow that knowledge bank and also that comfort factor with Aaron Rodgers. So yeah, if you told me, just saying at the end of the season, could Aaron Jones be like the Packers' leading pass catcher? I believe it just because he has that ability. And I think there's going to be that type of versatility in this offense to be able to maximize those opportunities.
And I just think that Matt LaFleur is smart. Like, like, if I was playing Madden, like, I'm not a huge Madden guy anymore, but, like, back in the day, I'd be audible and, Aaron Jones out every
Yeah.
time, and you get those matchups.
Well, and
Not in real life as much as in Madden, but
I want to say this too, because when you look at some of these motion things, because people are always like, well, you start them off in the backfield and they motion them out. Well, they do that because then that's asking the defense to diagnose, okay, how are you defending him? Is this a man look? Is this a zone look? How do the pieces react to it? What the pre-snap adjustments, the motions, what kind of information can you get from that? That's where Jones has been really valuable because he's not just a decoy. You can motion him out. He can still catch a pass on the perimeter if you need him to. And I think, because some people were yelling at me in inbox a couple days ago about, well, they do the two running back thing, but they're not both in the backfield together. Well, that's not the point. The point is that you can motion one of them out. You want to run them both out of the backfield, run them both out of the backfield. I don't care. But it's the motion aspect of it, what it's forcing the defense to disclose to the offense. That's where the value is. And the nice thing about it with Jones is he can still make plays off of that. It's not just using him as a decoy, and that's the end of that.
yeah, plus I think, like, moving a guy out gives you a situation where maybe the defense makes a mistake.
Yeah.
Maybe they don't cover it right, and then something big could happen because Aaron Jones can make something happen with the quickness. But, you mentioned the rookies. What have you seen, like, from the rookies, um, both, on both sides of the ball?
Yeah.
Has anyone really popped where you're like, "Oh, this guy, he's gonna be big quick?"
Well, the thing that was most impressive to me is all three young receivers have made plays. And there isn't a lot. Everybody says it and it's true. They'll tweet it. It's only OTAs, it's only minicamp. But Christian Watson, Romeo Dobbs, and even Samari Toure, excuse me, yesterday on Wednesday, they all have had days. They've all made plays. And I'll tell you this, Matt. I mean, yeah, it doesn't guarantee instant success. And as Rogers said very poignantly and very accurately, he wants to see production. There's a lot of potential, but he needs production. But that being said, I know what it looks like when you have a rookie come in and not do anything during an
Yeah.
offseason program where you go into training camp kind of wondering, okay, well, those 9 weeks went by and he didn't really catch my eye. What impressed me about the three young receivers is they all had practices where they caught my eye. Christian Watson is going to be a long-term project here. He's going to be a long-term development piece. I hope fans don't look at this thing and go, okay, well, overnight he was a second round pick. He needs to be Jordy Nelson. He needs to be Greg Jennings. He needs to be
Yeah.
Randall Cobb. That necessarily isn't going to be the case. But his makeup and how big his paws are, this kid, I think, could be a really big, big asset for this offense in the long run. Romeo Doubs, in a lot of ways, really does remind me of like a James Jones type player. And what I mean by that is not necessarily in just how he plays receiver, but he just seems to be assignment sure. And he also is very big on the details from what I noticed, especially during the rookie orientation camp. That's a time in which you're going up against all the other young players. If there's ever a time for the rookies and especially draft picks to look good, it's in that rookie camp because they're not going up against Jair Alexander yet. They're not going up against Rasul Douglas. And in that camp, I felt like he really was able to really establish himself. And Toure is very interesting because this is a guy at 7th round pick. He obviously has an interesting backstory in that he was at Montana, dominated FCS competition, kind of bet on himself a little bit to go to Nebraska. And while he didn't put up like the lightning bolt numbers he did at Montana, was still a huge playmaker there, in terms of his explosive plays. And we saw it in practice this week on Wednesday, or on Tuesday, I should say. Aaron Rodgers was doing a route on air concept with him, and they weren't able to connect on it. Toure came back, and Evan Siegel actually took a photo of this, and Mike Spofford, it was actually on his Aaron Rodgers story. Rodgers and Toure talked it out for a little bit. The next day came, and it wasn't with Rodgers, but Toure, especially in the 2-minute periods on Wednesday, just started looking like he belonged, just plucking balls out of the air. I mean, being able to make plays, and he's in an interesting spot where every single pass that gets thrown his way, a 7th round pick, those guys, they need to catch those and make those plays. And he did that. So all three of those rookie receivers to me flashed and they showed moments. Now, again, does that mean they're going to be number 1 through 3 in week 1? Maybe not. But in terms of being able to actually catch, our eye a little bit, all three of those guys check the box. But I'd be remiss, Matt, if I didn't talk about Quay Walker really quickly. Because there was one play, I was talking to my colleague Mike Spofford about this. They're just lined up. It's just him and it's Devondre Campbell behind the defensive front. And I said it the moment that he got drafted, and it was really an image that was burned into my brain when I finally caught my eyeballs. Him and Campbell, both around 6'4", standing next to each other behind the defensive tackles. That is a intimidation factor. Like the guys getting off the bus, setting that kind of tone. It really does that for me because it's not just that they have size, it's how quickly they can get out of their hips. It's how quickly they can cover sideline to sideline. There are going to be so many different options that Joe Barry is going to be able to utilize with those two guys. If Walker can prove that he's, ready for those snaps, you still have Chris Barnes involved too. I think last year showed there are packages they can do to get 3 inside backers involved if they need to. But Quay Walker looks he looks like a guy that if he ate 2 extra cheeseburgers a day would probably be an outside backer. I mean, he has that kind of size. I mean, I can't wait to see that kid play. I was a guy in 2014 that was hoping maybe a Ryan Shazier would fall to the Packers, maybe a CJ Mosley. Quay Walker's probably the guy that I was looking for. I mean, he has that type of athleticism in his body while also having the size to really be a factor.
Yeah, he's one name that I see a lot on my Facebook comments, like people asking about. But when I ask questions for you, I saw someone ask about. Yeah, I think he's a interesting player. Like if this defense, because I think this defense is going to be outstanding. If these rookies can make an impact early,
Yeah.
especially, but I think just like, but going back to what you're talking about, Watson, how Packer fans be patient.
Yeah.
When you said that, the first thing that popped in my head is they were pretty patient with Rashawn Gary, so I'm sure that it'll be fine.
You know what I am hopeful for though? And it was a different scenario because they had Donald Driver, they had Greg Jennings, and they had James Jones. But I think Packer fans, if you go back to 2008 through 2010, the amount of patience that they showed Jordy Nelson was important because Nelson wasn't the type of dish that was just made in a microwave. It took time for Nelson to become the player that he did. And once he hit it, once it clicked, the guy was an all, NFL type player, even if he didn't get that kind of accolades for the next 5-6 seasons. You're right, though. There always seems to be something, whether it's the draft pick or it's just the fact that he's the receiver and we were talking about how much they need a receiver. People want those guys to contribute sooner rather than later. But you look at it, man, the RAS scores on Watson, this guy tested off the charts. And if you can at least just be able to let him develop, and as Rogers said, be patient with the expectations for this guy. I think you could really be really pleased with what potentially the results could be down the line. But again, as Randall Cobb told him to his face, it's not going to happen overnight.
Yeah, that's actually a good point about the Greg Jennings days and Jordy, because all those guys weren't expected. Like they weren't drafted. Like all the fans, like we need a wide receiver. Like they were, they were there.
Yeah.
They had time to ensure. Like uh, multiple of them had little drop issues here and there.
Yeah.
But they ended up being pretty fantastic. Yeah, I want to ask you about one of my favorite players on the Green Bay Packers, Mr. Robert Tonyan.
Yeah.
He got hurt last year. I don't know a lot of I don't think that they've been saying too much, at least not that I heard. Uh, is he gonna play? I assume he's gonna play this year, but like, when do you expect him to be able to go?
Yeah, it's gonna be really interesting because obviously, I think if I remember right, Josiah's ACL injury happened probably 4 weeks earlier than Tunyon's did, and Josiah was basically in a position to be ready for the start of the season. Tunyon's was right at the end of October. Same game that Kylan Hill popped his ACL too in that very scary kickoff return incident. So we'll have to wait and see. The Packers obviously like to really be careful and cautious with how they handle this. If you get to training camp and he starts on the PUP list, I would not be alarmed by that at all. I think that's kind of what happened last year too with Josiah. So in terms of when he could be back, it's so hard to tell with these things. We haven't had a chance to talk with Robert, but it sounds like everything has been pretty much on pace for him and been, a good looking process. So where that takes him and where it's going to end up, I don't know. But when you talk about guys that have probably something that they feel like they have to prove and wanting to show that, hey, I can be a top tight end in this league year in and year out. That's where Robert is. And I'm very curious to see how he comes back from this. I mean, his 2020 season, that was about as iconic as it gets. I mean,
Yeah.
to be able to have 11 touchdowns, tying Paul Kaufman's record, being able to, be the consistent threat that he was at a position that hasn't always had the most production in this offense at tight end. It really, I thought, opened up a lot of doors. And in the interim, they have to find a way to stem the tide, whether it's Mercedes Lewis, Josiah DeGuara, Dom Daphne, or Tyler Davis, who has kind of emerged now. They have to find a way to be able to replace that production until he's back, because if you can get to that point, I think when you're talking about proven assets and trying to make Aaron Rodgers' life easier, there's really no more proven guy in terms of the comfort factor with Rodgers than Tonyan.
Yeah, I think he's huge on, oh, excuse me.
God bless you.
Hopefully he's back sooner rather than later. Can't breathe now. Okay, so here's a question, like, I regretfully have to ask because so many people are asking about it. Is there
Okay.
any chance that, Kevin King would be back?
I want to just say this quick because I've always been a Kevin King fan. It's unfortunate because of the trade, everybody always compares Kevin to TJ Watt. That's
Yeah,
not fair. That Kevin didn't ask for that. He just happened to be the guy sitting there at number 33 when the Packers finally did go on the clock. That being said, I feel like the top three is set, right? You
yeah,
have Jair, you have Rasul, who's was working. We saw him inside quite a bit during camp, and you have Eric Stokes. It seems to me like Keyshawn Nixon's probably the fourth corner, and I think comfortably so. To me, Nixon doesn't have the same body type as Jared Bush, but it almost kind of feels like this is that kind of guy where he has inside outside flexibility, and he's going to be one of the core guys on special teams. You can already hear it with the way he talks in practice. I mean, he is sort of that Bisaccia, kind of surrogate that they have there, and he really seems to be a very confident young man. You have Shamar John Charles. You have some guys that you're trying to develop. I guess what I'm saying is I'm not really sure where Kevin would fit into that
yeah,
equation. At the end of last season, he was basically playing just that dime role. And I thought both he and Joe Barry came up with some creative looks. I actually kind of really like that dime package that they came up where they had him almost kind of acting like that Adrian Amos box safety a little bit. But unless there's a change here with the cornerbacks, I just don't know where Kevin fits into that puzzle. To be honest with you, though, to be sitting here talking to you here in the, getting into the second week of June, I'm completely flabbergasted that he hasn't signed somewhere. I think Kevin King has a lot to offer in the NFL, and for him to be like the last free agent. And I don't know what the contract negotiations are like. I don't know if it's a Devondre Campbell thing where he wants the right opportunity. He's not just willing to sign anywhere. I don't know.
Yeah.
But for him and still being as young as he is, I still feel like Kevin has a lot to offer this league. I just don't know if it's going to be in Green Bay.
Yeah, I definitely have no hate for Kevin King. I think he gets unnecessary hate for like what you said with TJ Watt. I think obviously if they did want him and brought him back, I would assume they'd get a good deal on him. He knows the defense. That's kind of like where I think it fits. But
Yeah, and
although
it just and with the other issue is there too is that he's never really been like an inside type guy. He's usually been a perimeter corner, and it just with Jair being back and healthy, and it appears like that's going to be a spot for Eric Stokes. Yes, they're going to probably move around a little bit, but I just right now as it stands, I don't know what the path would be to get him on the field.
all right, gotcha. Uh, this is another Facebook question. Is there any chance that the Packers would go out and get another wide receiver, or do they feel like? Because I feel like there's a lot of them right now,
Yeah.
and I don't know how many they're going to keep. First of all, how many wide receivers do you think that will be on this
If
53?
if everybody stays healthy, I could absolutely see them having 7. I really do. Just because I think, Sammy Watkins, you heard what Matt LaFleur said this week. He sees him being a big part of this offense. Randall Cobb is not going anywhere. Alan Lazard, if everything gets squared away there, he's there. Based on the law of averages, Christian Watson, Dobbs are in there. Toure, you have Jawan Winfrey has had some big moments. He didn't practice at the end of Wednesday, but he had some huge plays that he made on Tuesday. Malik Taylor has been a big part of this team. So with them having questions there and not really sure which form this is going to take, I absolutely could see them going 6 or 7 at that position. That being said, with them having Watkins now, I really don't know where a veteran signing right now would fit. I think if anything, you got to kind of figure out who you want, and once you do that, you got to proceed. Unless there would be an injury or something, you go back to 2012. After Alex Green was coming off the injury, James Starks had gotten hurt again. That's when ultimately push came to shove, and it's like, okay, let's bring in Cedric Benson, right? That those type of things, injuries, guys coming off injuries, that can kind of change the board game a little bit. So you never say never, but as it stands right now, I just feel like the Packers made their move. They signed Sammy Watkins and they drafted 3 receivers. Enough for you. I just feel like there's a law of diminished point, that even if there is a Julio there or somebody that I know fans, the names that really roll off the tongue for fans, I just feel like the Packers have set their board and now just have to play with it.
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm thinking. I think some fans, well, and I get the appeal. Like when you play Madden, you go into free agency, you go get
Yeah.
Odell Beckham, you go and it's fun. But I would have to assume that they like a lot of those guys, and you know they
And
have a lot of them. There's some
yeah,
fans don't love the guys, you know.
sure, but you can't stack your depth chart where you have all these veterans and then you don't have room for the two rays if potentially he shows out in the preseason. You don't want to miss on a 5th or 6th or 7th round pick that could be a big playmaker for you down the line by just needing a safety blanket there. You need
Yeah.
to be able to actually both have your production but also the potential that's going to potentially bring you and carry you forward.
And so you kind of mentioned like some of the guys who in camp are doing good. Is there like a player that we wouldn't expect that maybe it's not as flashy, but like that is showing out in camp?
Yeah, I will say this. I don't know what it'll mean in August, but I mean, Rico Gafford caught my eye several times playing cornerback now. I mean, the guy's speed is legitimate. I mean, the guy, as you know, I mean, he's just an acclaimed track and field athlete and has this prodigious speed that everybody talked about, but just really never has been able to kind of find his position in the National Football League. And he has maybe the best coach of that position now in his room, with Jerry Gray. So I'm really fascinated to see what Gafford can do. He's had a couple PBUs during practice. In that way, he's really impressed me. But I have to say, I mean, to me so far, it really has been Amari Rodgers. And And Amari Rogers, we had a chance to talk to him this week, and I wrote a story about him already on our website. Last year was a disappointment for him. Not for Amari Rogers, the third round pick, the human being. He wanted to come in and contribute, and for whatever reason, it didn't happen. Whether it was some of the pieces they had there or just some of his own stuff he had to overcome, he came back really locked in. And I know you always hear the stories about, oh, the guy came back faster, he came back leaner, and all this. This guy came back more confident. And I think you can actually see that during practice. He knows what his responsibilities are. He knows what his expectations are. And I'm telling you, Matt, there's one guy right now on this roster. I mean, maybe two if you want to count Aaron Jones, but they're not going to put him in that spot, I don't think, a lot. To me, Rodgers is the guy that fits the best for that jet motion action. And I feel like if he can get his grasp of the playbook, and if he can really, he talked about being down 4% body fat, get his endurance where it needs to be, his cardio where it needs to be, and show out during this camp. He's a young man that has everything in front of him and still everything to gain. And unlike these rookies that came in, he has that year already with Rodgers in this offense behind him. He's been the other guy that definitely I've seen a little bit from this spring that leads me to believe we're going to see a different player come training camp.
Yeah, I've been yelling about Amari Rogers. Plus, I think being in the same room as Devontae last year, I think that has to not that. I just think that it might be true or not, but I feel like anybody like behind Jair, behind anyone a corner that was with Charles Woodson or any of these
Yeah.
great players, I think you as a young player, like you learn to be a professional. Like you know how to catch her, you know how to do the things,
Yep.
but how to go through the week
Well,
and
and he has the best mentor possible in Randall Cobb. This isn't just a guy
yeah.
that's like, I'm going to take him under my wing. He's known Randall Cobb since the kid was 9 years old when his dad was coaching him at Kentucky. I mean, Cobb saying that those words to Vrabel that Jason Vrabel, the Packers receivers coach, mentioned in his availability last month, saying, this kid's coming. Like you can see it. Like he's on it. That means something. And when you have that type of athlete pulling for a young man like that, it's not just because he's a third round pick. It's no, because he believes in Amari Rogers. And that's the other reason too, that I think that, one way or another, this kid's going to find it and going to find his way into the lineup. Now, I don't know what that's going to all mean, Matt, in terms of catches, receptions, touchdowns. I don't know how that works out because this isn't Devontae Adams anymore. This isn't that type of offense. It's going to be very multiple. So, but they need to find guys who can contribute in key situations. And the more guys that you can see that establish themselves, the better chance the Packers are going to have of succeeding on offense this season.
Yeah, I'm stoked for Amari Rogers. I've been yelling about him, but like not because like any like wisdom I have.
Yeah.
It just I just have a hunch, and my hunches are right. I was yelling about Robert Tonyan the offseason before he got 11 touchdowns. So I feel like if I scream about you in the offseason, my mojo just goes your way. Not
That's all
your
you
hard
need.
work. Not your hard work.
It just all sets in there. It's just this like osmosis. The Ramage osmosis, and these guys all figure it out. But the other thing I like about Rodgers too is that you get guys, and I've seen them over the years that they don't have a great year, and they come back and they're kind of punchy, they're kind of curt. That conversation we had with him this week, in addition to the fact he's just an incredibly nice young man, but in a way, it really reminded me of the conversation we had with Devontae in 2016. I'll never forget it because Devontae's coming off of just this nightmare 2015 season, and he's sitting in the locker room. We're all talking to him. We're all huddled around to him. He's flexing his bicep because he's so, he's feeling so good about the work he put in this offseason. And when you have that type of unshakable confidence, that's the it factor, man. That's what people need to succeed in the NFL because there's going to be bad days. You can be an all pro. You can be the 90th guy on the offseason roster. There are going to be days that are going to test you. And if you have the mental toughness to push through that, that's ultimately not only what's going to allow you to succeed over the course of the season, but it's going to allow you to play big in those moments.
Yeah, I forgot. I just had a brain fart. But no, because
I talked a while
you
there.
you were talking about like guys like in the locker room like interviews a little bit.
Yeah.
It seems like as a fan like they're having fun. Like I seen Jair jump in on an interview like they're
on Adrian Amos's, yeah.
and when I had Adrian Amos on my podcast, he was talking about like how much fun the DBs have. He said DBs always have more fun, and he kind of was talking about there. So, but what's the feel of that locker room. Like everyone, I wouldn't think that they're all in there bitter, but like, does it seem like this team is just vibing together? I mean, it's not like
you're,
I don't think any
you're like,
locker
don't
room.
talk to me. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think any locker room in June is like they're all mad. But
It's
what
funny you
what
asked.
what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's funny you asked me that because in inbox when I wrote the one for today on our website, and somebody asked me basically in a word how you would summarize, the mood of the locker room right now, and I said anticipation because I think this is a team that it's so easy to say they have unfinished business. They had unfinished business after 19 and 22. But what's weird about this is that I think they found a way, Matt. They found a way, despite all the things that were working against them with the cap, despite all the people wondering if they're going to have to tear this thing down. They actually found a way to put together another Super Bowl contending team, despite having to work through a lot of difficult decisions in March and in April. And I feel like the anticipation factor is there because there's so many guys in that locker room that feel confident about their respective phase. Think about it. The defense looks to be the best the Packers have had since 2009 and 10. That's the expectation. As LaFleur said, as Joe Barry has said, you have to do it on the grass. You can't just do it on paper. But in terms of what you were talking about earlier with them being deep at all these positions, it's off the charts. There's never been anything like it during my time on the beat. Special teams, there's a lot more swagger. Just watching Rich Bisaccia with those guys, the tempo, the energy. You're hearing about, some of these workouts they've had that have been really testing guys. He is making such a difference, I think, already from the X's and O's and the details standpoint. You've already seen it during the pace of these practices. And offensively, I just feel like with Aaron Rodgers back, there is that confidence right now that, you know what? We don't know what it's going to look like in Minnesota, but we feel like we're on the right path and we're going to get to where we need to get to. So when you ask me that question, I hearken back to what I said in inbox. I think it's a lot of anticipation. I think it's a lot of, positivity and eagerness, but I think ultimately it's this idea and it's this feeling that, yeah, we didn't get it done last year and we didn't get it done the year before that, but we're still here. We still got our swagger and we still feel like we're just one step away from being able to get back to that championship promised land.
Yeah, I say it every year, but I'm pumped about this team. Like I think this defense is more than legit. Because I've been saying it, like I think this defense will be one of the best that we've seen in a very long time, and maybe one of the top 2 or 3 that we've seen like in a very, very, very long time. So I'm pumped. I think Aaron Rodgers is gonna do what Aaron Rodgers does. I think these young guys, I think they're in a good situation. Obviously, when you have a Hall of Fame quarterback
Yeah.
and
And
the running game, but just everything, I'm pretty pumped.
and just how good has Rodgers looked too? I mean, physically. I mean, I don't know if you got a chance to watch the match at all, but
Yeah,
just
his arm with Brady.
his
I thought
yeah,
it was
that
an
was
edit. Was that an
fantastic.
edit? I wasn't sure the one I saw because Rodgers looked like he's just like the Rock over there, and Brady looked like me except for no fat.
But that's what was funny because everybody's talking about the biceps, and rightfully so. That made for quite a meme and quite a photo image. But to me, it's like, gosh darn it, his quad, like his calves. I mean, like Aaron Rodgers for 38, 39 years old looks fantastic. People are upset. Oh, he's not here for the offseason program. The guy comes back looking like an Adonis, and everybody's like,
Yeah.
It's going to be okay, people. I promise you, everything's going to be fine." And, and ultimately, I think that's what it comes back to. If you have Aaron Rodgers, you have a chance. And I think the one thing the Packers have done such a good job of is they've realized there were years where we lost down the stretch. Now they've lost because of the offense too at times, but the defense not being able to play where they need to be in the postseason. Obviously, I don't need to reiterate the special teams things, but I just feel like the stage is set and they have to stay healthy. They have to execute. Guys have to play up to their potential. But in terms of having the confidence of what this team could accomplish, the Packers are chasing nobody. I mean, they are trying to set the trend here, and certainly they have to do it and win the games. But I feel like with them being able to bring back the pieces they did, some pieces I did not expect to be back. I didn't see any scenario in which they were going to be able to keep a Devondre Campbell. To keep Campbell and Douglas too. I mean, now certainly the Devontae trade helped that, but they found ways to keep their main guys, and now we're going to see if they can keep on that climb.
Yeah, I think the front office needs a little bit of respect from a lot of people, like what they've done, and, like Like, I didn't expect everyone to come back, but I'm no cap guru either. So, like, I was watching other people, like, what can they do? Because like you said, that they got Campbell, and like, I think a lot of people thought that it
I
was unlikely that because he could have won and got super paid. I would think.
Yeah, and I think the thing that helped the Packers is just Campbell realizing this was his best fit because he's been in other defenses and he saw how he got utilized in those defenses. And there is a certain point where I think you have to marry the compensation and what that's going to mean for you in the long term and your family with also understanding that okay, you need to be in a place that's going to continue to pay you, is going to continue to want you to be a part of their defense, and that's where Campbell, I think, has to look at the track record and say, yeah, this is where I belong. And this is a price that I'm willing to comfortably, play for. The Douglas one fascinated me because honestly, the season ended. I'm like, okay, if you're Rasul Douglas's agent or if you're
Yeah.
Russ Ball, I don't know how you figure out a number for Rasul Douglas. This guy was on Arizona's practice squad making whatever it is, $111,000 a year, whatever the thing was to be on a practice squad last year. And now suddenly he's a Pro Bowl alternate that had 5 interceptions and 2 brought back for a touchdown. You don't see that ever.
No, you don't.
In one thing that Brian Gutekunst has done better than anybody, and I think it's one thing that has been improved during his administration with his personnel department is Devondre Campbell, Rasul Douglas, Alan Lazard, Robert Tunyon, the multitude of guys that were on other teams' discard piles that Green Bay brought in and made them significant playmakers, gave them the opportunity to be significant playmakers. That to me has been one of the hallmarks of Gutekunst's administration so far, and now they got to see if they can keep that going.
Yeah, I think coaching too, to
Yeah,
have a guy knowing what he's the best at and put him in position to do. Because I assume other coaches saw these players and they tried, they just didn't. It didn't work. So you got to give kudos to everybody.
the Jerry Gray thing, man. I mean, if you ever want a lesson in a reminder of what Jerry Gray has accomplished in this league and how good he is at his craft, I don't know how they got Rasul Douglas to be able to contribute as fast as he did, let alone play at the level in which he played. I mean, this is a guy that was signed on October 26th, and by the end of the month was making a game-changing, game-ending play against the Arizona Cardinals. Had to get thrown into the fire due to injuries and some inconsistencies there, and he balled out. Those type of things, I think, are. And you obviously give credit to Douglas too for being there 5 till 10 at night every night. I mean, the guy put in the work, but I've said it before. I mean, Jerry Gray is a DB whisperer, and to me, I mean, I think that was the perfect evidence of it. What he was able to accomplish last season.
Yeah, I think it's fantastic. Well, I'm gonna let you run so you can get back to your life. But everyone, if you're on Twitter, you're probably already following him. But at Wes Hod on Twitter and Packers.com, right? Like
Yep.
that's pretty
Yeah.
easy to remember.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I remember my boss always gives me crap, Duke, because we don't do as much live streaming now in the post-COVID era. We'll probably bring that back gradually. But there was a time where Spoff and I, like right next to each other, would do live streams together, and then they don't want us breathing on each other.
Yeah.
But anyway, I got into a rotation there where I always struggled with my exit intro or my outro because I was so used to for 5-6 years going, all right, stay tuned to PackersNews.com. I'm Wes Hodkiewicz. We'll see you next time. Well, PackersNews.com is the Green Bay Press Gazette's website, is Gannett's website. And I've unfortunately snuck a few of those in there at times with the Packers. And Duke always gives me kind of a look when I do that. But yes, Packers.com, at Wes Hod on Twitter. I also joined Instagram. I'm not as big as you on Instagram, but I promised that was going to be my last social media. I will never be on TikTok, but I did go to Instagram just because that seems where things are moving too. And you don't have to hear about as many people's opinions. You can just look at photos of puppies and
Yeah.
feel really good about yourself.
I actually love Instagram. I know a lot of people on Twitter trash Instagram, but to me, like it's fun. Like there's a
That's the
mix.
one thing they trash on Twitter is
They
Instagram.
trash everything. I
Yeah,
always think it's funny when someone will be on Twitter bashing Facebook or Instagram or whatever, but like it's all basically the same crap. Like
absolutely.
you just have to make it good. Like if you don't like something, that's the beautiful thing about social media. I think if you don't like something, you can mute it, you can unfollow, you can block it, you can
Yep.
do whatever. Like if But I like Instagram. I met a lot of good Packer fans, people like I've tailgated with, people I've met in real life, people like great Packer fans, and now they're moving more towards video and stuff. Like
Yeah.
they're trying to keep up with TikTok. You don't got to dance though. But one day I'll come over to
No.
Lambeau Field and me and you can be at my TikTok. We'll hit them with the.
I'll be in the I'll be in the background just, like, with a sign or something. I don't
No, I
dance.
don't
We're
dance.
we're not
I don't
dancing.
dance on TikTok. Most of my TikTok is just stupid stuff, making jokes about my eyes.
See, I'm not good at comedy though. That's the only thing. Like I'm good at subtle comedy if it's like related to people that I know, but I can't, I don't feel like like you're really good at it. And the thing I'll also give you credit for is you can do it in like 15-second increments. Uh I think I would need like a Jerry Seinfeld type stand-up thing to be able to actually make my point, you know? But yeah, I remember in 2009 they forced us to get onto Instagram, or was it 2000? No, Twitter. It was 2009. They forced us to get onto. Must have been 2013 or 14. We had to get on Instagram, and I didn't like it. And I'm such a laggard with that stuff. I don't like the transition. But one thing I've learned, and it's really cool, is we do the videos from practice, and sometimes people pick them up, and it creates some pretty cool content. But it was the messages that people were sending me, just regular fans just following it, and how I felt like that kind of made their day better. That's what ultimately put me on Instagram, because you can put a video on Twitter and it goes down the thing quickly and everybody moves on. But on Instagram, like people, they talk about how excited they are about the season or how much they love AJ Dillon, or there's a lot more positivity I feel with that platform. And maybe I'm just shielding myself from the rest of it, but that was one of the reasons I got on there. I don't have a lot to offer, I don't feel, but like if I can make people's day just a little bit better, or even promote some of my stories with it, yeah, then it's worth it for
Yeah,
me.
it is definitely like more positive because like with Twitter, like you can pick up your phone, you could be on the toilet, like this guy sucks, and they're just
Yeah.
hammering away. But on Instagram, it's like usually like it's pictures or it's like I follow a lot of Packer accounts, it's graphics, giving cool little stats about whatever player. There's guys like you who are able to show like inside practice, like what you can with videos. It's just cool. Like, I don't see too much ranting unless it's about
Yeah.
like another team like me. I'll rant about the Vikings every now and again, but I'm trying to keep it more positive. Like I get
Okay.
sucked in because like sometimes people irritate me, and then I have to go on a little rant, and I don't like being like negative. But
Yeah.
it's sports, so it's not like it's real hate. Like even like I said this about David Carr, which I kind of wish I didn't because I didn't go too
I
far,
think
but
I missed this one.
yeah, I was kind of rude. He said the Packers wouldn't win 8 games, and I ain't gonna lie, that triggered me
Really?
a little bit. Yeah, what made me mad because people defended him and they're like, he knows more about football than you'll ever know. I was like,
He
not about
obviously
the
doesn't know anything
Packers.
about the NFC North, but
Yeah, like he doesn't know more about the Packers than me, obviously. Like
yeah,
even I think it was Big Cat, Barstool Big Cat. No, no, I forget what Bears fan. It might have been that one from NFL Network. He
yeah.
defended the Packers. Like when you got Bear fans defending the Packers, because nobody thinks the Packers are winning under 8 games. That's what made it mad because I feel like some of the big national guys, like
Yeah.
they just say stuff because they know that it's going to trigger guys like me, and we're going to scream about it. And it just, I know it's entertainment, but still,
But see, that's where it gets really tough for me though, because like we were talking about, I got to do that insider inbox thing, right? 6 days a week, Spofford and I, we do that. So I do at least three of them, or if he's on vacation, I got to do all of them. The reason those things kind of grind me a little bit and stick in my craw is because a lot of times people will react to it and then ask us about it, or have a reaction to that then they kind of sort of portray onto us. And that stuff frustrates me because I do agree with you. I do feel like a lot of times it's like, okay, it's June 10th. We need to find a way to get the narrative going. There's not a lot going on right now. We're this far out from the beginning of camp. Let's just say some garbage. That stuff gets at me a little bit because I think what people don't realize is I'm not trying to act like there's not like fans aren't sophisticated, but I know there's people that listen with one ear and then either think of that as a report, or they think of it as the truth or the gospel, and then that gets a reaction out of them that can be negative. That's where it gets kind of frustrating for me. That, and I think I always knew that, but I think during the Rodgers thing last year, I picked up on that even more because that was a scenario in which we didn't have a lot of information, but yet everybody felt like from a national perspective, we have to keep this conversation going
Yeah.
because it's Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah, and so many people today hate Aaron Rodgers because of stuff that wasn't even him. Like,
Yeah.
and I'm, like, called, like, the biggest Aaron Rod I protect him and I defend him, but, like, I don't care if you like Aaron Rodgers or not, but, like, if you're not gonna like him for don't like him for the right reasons. I feel like they say, "Well, he won't shut up." Like, no, they're talking about him, and I get why they're talking about him. It's Aaron Rodgers, all that stuff that was going on. They're gonna talk about him, but, like, some people, that repetitiveness, they just think that there's something new happening, and it's not. It's the same
And
thing.
yeah, and I don't wanna just put it completely all on the Nationals, because like, certainly they have to put their face in front of it, they have to put their brand on it. The thing that can get tough is when you get some of the aggregators. I'm not even talking about the Pro Football Talks, I'm talking about the random type websites that just try to, grab quotes and put them up and end up on my Facebook feed, like The Heavy or whatever, like all these different things.
Yeah, oh, that one.
Those are tough, or the spin or whatever it is. Those are tough because that's not even necessarily a journalist, or it's just a person. Like, it's just an aggregator. It's a person just trying to create clicks. And I'll tell you, I have uncles and I have family members and friends that don't understand the difference between that and the Milwaukee Journal Sentinel. I mean, and that can be really, really difficult, because if somebody says, "Hey," this happened a lot last year. Like, hey, Stephon Gilmore makes a lot of sense for the Green Bay Packers. Well, in the game of telephone, that turns into, wait, the Packers are interested in Stephon Gilmore,
Yep,
and then you end up signing Rasul Douglas. In all the comments, go back and look at it, Matt. Look at all the
yeah.
comments on the Packers tweet of Rasul Douglas being signed, and people, these raging reactions to it. Well, that's not Stephon Gilmore. And now you look back in the year later, those guys are on different stages of their careers right now. And it's because Brian Gutekunst and his scouts do this for a living, and we all sit here and just kind of watch from the peripheral.
Yeah,
So
that's why I try to share as much truth I see from Twitter onto Facebook. I feel like Facebook people like there's so many Facebook pages, like you mentioned, like there's a whole bunch, and it's just like a sport world, or it could be any name. Like you said,
yeah,
they'll take someone who writes something and they kind of change it, make it clickbaity, and then they throw ads on it. Like that's not real journalists. That's a lot of times, like
no,
when I'm trashing the media, like I'm not like clear enough, but that's what I'm talking about. Like
yeah,
these crappy pages, and then sometimes the huge guys. I'm never going at beat writers, people who are in the dirt,
yeah.
grinding it out. But anyways,
But see, that's why I have a lot of respect for what Tom Silverstein does and what Rob does and Pete Doherty, like people from that, because whatever they write, they're in the locker room the next day. They're accountable for it. If Aaron Rodgers, somebody wants to talk to them about it, they're right there. You can go
yeah,
talk to them about it. And there's a lot to be said for that, Matt, because there's a lot of people that'll say stuff and write stuff, and you'll never see them near a locker room. You'll never see
yeah.
them by a player. It's a lot easier for Wes Hodkiewicz to talk trash about Matt Ramage when I'm on a website or I'm on a podcast than it is if Matt's standing on the United Nations, steps
Yeah.
at Lambeau Field. So
Well, I'd
that's what
be
it is.
there. I wouldn't do anything, but I would just look at you every day and annoy you.
Just make it awkward.
Yeah, just stare at you as you walk to your car, eating like some quick trip, not sharing. You got some good
We will
backup at
see you
that.
next time.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
got some good backup at that stadium. But everyone, check out Wes definitely on Packers.com. I'll put all the links and the stuff people can find, especially on Instagram. I'll give you a little shout out to my Instagram story. Get people to follow you. I think
Thank
you're a
you.
good follow. Yeah, I
Yeah,
think people definitely need to follow you.
I'm like the small business that just opened up down the street, just trying to get people's interest. I got the coupons, I got all the stuff. Come in and test it out. Yeah, we'll see. But honestly, I could have 100 people following me on there. The people that do follow me, and I'm sure you feel the same way with your base and who you've picked up over the years. They become a part of the community, right? And it's
Yeah.
you want to do it for them. So again, if that can be 1,000 people, that can be 10,000 people. It doesn't matter. Like it's about being able to actually find a way to give people information first and foremost, but then also, really connect them and get them a foot closer to the team that they love.
Yeah, for me, I it's fun because without people like watching or listening and mostly commenting, I don't care about people liking and like
Yeah.
people commenting, like the interaction, it makes it fun. If no one's commenting, then it's not as fun. Like you're
Yeah.
just talking to yourself. So like for me, that's why like because I feel like I can talk Packers with like friends all day long, on
Well,
on the internet.
And I'm sure you've gotten a taste of it now too. I mean, there's nothing cooler, than if you're walking around Lambeau and someone's like, "Hey, Wes," like, it doesn't have to be anything big. It happened a couple days ago when I was walking down to practice. It was rained out, but you had some fans that were sticking around waiting for practice and come and take a picture and say hi and say they like the website. I mean, that stuff means a lot because I think what people don't realize is that if they are not doing that stuff, if they're not engaging with the content, I don't exist. So my ability to feed my family and you and I doing this, I know you always joke about that, go on with your life. Well, this is my life. And these are the type of things that I do. Like my parents worked at, paper mills. I work for the Green Bay Packers. I mean, this is how I take care of my family. It's how I keep the lights on, even if they're not overly great.
Yeah.
Um, it's just that's how we get it done. So I appreciate everybody that comes along on that journey because honestly, without them, then what value am I bringing anybody?
Yeah, I think you're fantastic. I think you're one of the fan favorites as far as all the reporters go. There's a lot of good ones, but I feel like people like you. Every time like I have you on, whenever I mention on Facebook or whatever, people are always like, hey, yo, he's awesome. I love that show and all that stuff. So
Well, I appreciate you putting me over. I mean, it's cool, and I think I said this to you last time I was on too. I mean, to go from where I came from with the newspaper, where I was just a byline and I didn't exist from a personality standpoint at all, to be doing this now, or even today, I'm wearing my Packers stuff because we had to do some on camera stuff today at work. I mean, I that was a world I was never prepared for, but I kind of got thrown into, and it's just a part of the job because you have to have people talking about this stuff. It's not just about reading anymore. You have to be visual.
yeah, I don't
And even
read.
though I'm not Brad Pitt, we're doing our best here to be visual. So it
You're a
is what
good
it
looking fella.
is.
All right, everyone, check out Wes Hot. I'll put all the links in the description, probably on the screen when I edit this thing. So I appreciate you, Wes. You are the
Yeah.
man.
Thanks,
Taking
buddy.
time. I took an hour of your time today. Usually they don't go this long, but I felt like we were vibing. You know what I mean?
We were, and I'm glad we got to talk some football. I think the last few times I went a little long and we weren't able to really dive into the team as much. So yeah, hopefully, maybe we'll get into training camp here and jump back on. But yeah, it was a fun off-season program. And honestly, dude, just was great to be back to somewhat normal again. I mean,
Oh yeah, for
to
sure.
be in the locker room, to be able to be at practice and actually engaging with players and seeing things without all the restrictions was a blessing. It was a much needed reprieve after a tough couple years.
Yeah, I didn't even think about that with the locker room being open now. If like, I think the questions I would assume are easier. It's just like this, how we're talking. I think in
Yeah.
person, it's a little bit different. It's more
Well,
personal
and
or whatever.
yeah, and you remember too. I mean, as great as this technology is, and it's awesome, the Zoom and everything that we figured out, the way we did our press conferences and our communication staff did a fantastic job of being able to facilitate that. Because again, the way I look at it is, I need to talk to people in order to do my job, right? They made that happen. It wasn't the best case scenario for everybody, but we did it. The only problem with that though is it's okay. Matt Ramage, you get your question. Rob Domofsky, you get your question. It's tough to get a dialogue going. It was nice to be back in the locker room this week talking
Yeah.
some MMA with, Mercedes Lewis and Kenny Clark and, congratulating Jair on his contract. Those are the type of things you want to be able to do because at the end of the day, we are human beings here. We're just not all these avatars. We gotta interact a little bit. So that aspect of it was really refreshing.
Yeah, I agree. I think like with interviews over Zoom, it seemed like almost a little bit robotic.
Yeah.
Not
Well,
completely. There was some like especially with Roger, he's always gonna make some jokes. But
yeah.
yeah, I think in person, it's obviously I think you're getting better content out of them
Yeah.
or feedback. That content.
And then, dude, just being in front of people. First time I ever stood in front of AJ Dillon. I mean, we went think of everything AJ Dillon's accomplished the last 2 years. I'd never actually been in front of that human being before. It's wild, and I'm glad we're able to do it. I've told people from day one, however we had to do this, and we'll see how training camp goes with vid, and if we're past it, but whatever we have to do, I'm going to be able to adapt to it because that's just that's the playing ground rules, right? But to be able to get back in the locker rooms the last couple weeks was really cool because it just you get to see sides of guys that you didn't really get to see when they're at the podium, just like anything else. It's fun to be able to have those conversations again.
Yeah, I think that'll be fun too, like this season, like you know, during the games and all the things, so you guys get
Yeah.
up and close with them. But again, appreciate you, everyone. Appreciate you listening. Check out at Wes Hod on Twitter and all the places. Go Pack Go.